This one is, without a doubt, the most heartbreaking song I've ever written, but I also think it might be my new favorite.
Were we ever meant to learn? Life's just roads.
I wrote this in the first week after coming home from an incredibly impactful trip. It was in the summer of last year, so 2025. My whole family, so my brother and my parents, went back to visit our grandparents in Slovenia. Then we also did a little road trip through Italy. And everything about that trip was absolutely magical. The weather was incredible. We got to see so many beautiful things architecturally, nature-wise. And it was that combined with seeing my parents for the first time in a really long time. We hadn't been back since really COVID started. So 2019, it was like 6 years. And that just created this extremely visceral experience throughout the entire trip, where I would very often find myself observing a moment while being in it, like whether that was driving in the car and looking out the window, or sitting for lunch with my family and just like trying to take in how unbelievably perfect and magical that moment was, that I very often throughout that trip found myself on the verge of tears, which sounds ridiculous, but because it hit me in that moment how impermanent it all was. And there was something incredibly beautiful, yet so incredibly tragic about that. And it's like a recurring emotion that kept coming back throughout the trip. How cruel this impermanence of our life is. You know, we have this incredible evolutionary ability to absorb everything that's happening around us, to process these extremely complex emotions and to appreciate the wonders that surround us. Yet at the same time, the price that we pay for it is also being inadvertently aware of how temporary it all is. And it's something that has sort of been, as something that I've thought about a lot over the last few years. And I think it just kind of reached a head during this trip and then when coming home and I was sort of like processing everything that had happened, I was like, you know what, this needs to be a song. This is verse 1.
I guess it fits, it's raining. Even the sky is crying that every good thing has to end. You hold on to the moment, but it doesn't hold on to you. Turns out that it's a fickle friend.
Quite serendipitously, a few days before we had left Italy and flew back home to San Francisco, I got this reel on my Instagram feed that was about how, I guess it was like a meme of the feeling you have when driving to the airport after having like the most incredible trip of your life, knowing that it's never going to happen again. And it was a scene from a movie with that over it. And I was like, wow, how incredibly perfectly timed. And for some reason that reel, as dumb as it sounds, stuck in my head because it really perfectly described what I was feeling at the time. And so when I sat down at the piano a few days after coming home, that was the first line that I wrote. And I initially thought the song was going to be about a trip, like the ride to the airport after taking a very magical trip. That was the initial concept that I had. And so I started off the song thinking it was going to be about that. And coincidentally, on the day we were flying to San Francisco, we were flying out of Rome, it was raining that day. And it was basically the first day that it was really like just straight up gloomy weather. There were some like summer showers and storms, but there was not a single day during that trip up until the last day was it actually fully raining, like fully gloomy weather. And it felt almost a little too fitting. And so that's why I wrote that first. That's how I started the song. It was the first thing I wrote. I guess it fits, it's raining. Even the sky is crying, that every good thing has to end. Again, thinking that the song was going to be about sort of mourning the beauty that you just witnessed and knowing you'll never get it back. And then the second half of this verse kind of very viscerally describes what I had been feeling this entire trip is you hold on to the moment, like you try to stay in the moment, as I did multiple times during this trip, trying to take it all in, trying to absorb it and stay for as long as possible. So you hold on to the moment, but it does not hold on to you. You know, that's the irony of all beautiful things in life, is none of it lasts. Turns out that it's a fickle friend. So it's an unreliable friend every moment. It's like you try to hold on to it, but it doesn't hold on to you. So there's no point. Not point in trying, but it's inevitable. That's a better word. Pre-chorus.
What kind of cruelty did it take to shape the temporary state of all I've known and all I've loved? I spent my life trying to bottle up a running river and building houses in a flood.
So at this point, a few days had passed since I had written the verse. I just had the few lyrics, like I guess if it's raining, and then the moment line, and that was it. And I felt stuck because I had multiple iterations of the pre-chorus, and a lot of them were just describing some of the things we had done during this trip, like the Tyrrhenian Sea and the Amalfi Coast, all of that, but none of it all felt a little too, not specific, but perhaps devoid of deeper meaning. You know, it's like you're listing locations. All right, cool, but there's like no depth attached to it. And so a few days later, I started like playing around with the song idea again, and it sort of hit me that it was not only raining on the day that we were flying home to San Francisco, but also the day after I had seen my grandparents not for the last time, but like when we were saying goodbye and leaving for Italy. That was also when it was raining, and I was like, oh, maybe that's sort of the moment that I've been trying to circle, but unable to quite describe. And that's when that day, it all just came out, and it was extremely, extremely emotional. I'm like on the verge of tears talking about it now, but that day I remember I cried so many times when I was writing this. And I played it for my mom after, and I cried after that. I was like, ah, this song. And I think it's so personal. It's like something that I feel on a very, I'm like crying just thinking about it now. It's something that I feel on a very deep level, but I also think it's something that's so intrinsically human, is to sort of battle with this balance of taking everything in and enjoying the beauty that's around us. But at the same time, you have this like almost a shadow hanging over you. That's like a dramatic way of saying it, but perhaps like an undercurrent of awareness that it is all bound to end. And there's something really, like I said before, beautiful and tragic at the same time. And that's what this pre-chorus ended up being. It's like, what kind of cruelty did it take to shape the temporary state of all I've known and all I've loved? So how incredibly cruel it is, you know? And you're talking to not necessarily a deity, but to the universe, you know? And I think that's another instance where you can sort of superimpose your own beliefs on top of it, you know, whatever you personally believe in, that's who you're talking to. For me, it's just the existence of everything, you know? It's not like it was purposeful. It was very much acts of randomness. But you're saying what kind of cruelty, like attaching emotion to it, because that's what we do as humans, right? Is attach emotions to actions and events. So what kind of cruelty did it take to shape, like how cruel to create this to have this incredible, beautiful world full of complexities and emotions and experiences, and yet it's all so temporary. How cruel that is, that we can't stay in it forever. I've spent my life trying to bottle up a running river, and that's very directly something, speaking from personal experience. I've very much, one of the hardest things that I've not had to learn, but I'm still learning, is accepting change. I very much find comfort in not only routine, but in things being a certain way. And I think I'm already a lot better at it than when I was younger, but still I think it's something that I will constantly have this aversion to naturally, is the state of everything changing. And yet that's the most natural state of the world, is change. You know, it's the only thing that is consistent is change. So I've spent my life trying to bottle up a running river. It's like you're trying to capture something that inevitably goes away and moves on to the next thing, and building houses in a flood. So trying to sort of protect these precious moments that are bound to fade, to move on to the next thing. Cool. chorus. I need to stop talking, otherwise I'm gonna start crying. Chorus.
Were we ever meant to learn? Life's just roads with no return. Of all the things I wish that I could know, I think it's the art of letting go.
This part was the last missing puzzle piece of the entire song. So at this point, I'd already written the pre-chorus and the verse, and I kind of knew what I was talking about, but I needed some sort of, not a catchy, but a concise title that is also a book title to capture this. You know, how am I going to brand this in a way? Like what's the tagline of the song? And so very often in moments like this when I'm stuck, I'll start scrolling through Pinterest. And sometimes, especially when I've been writing these songs, I'll type into the search like aesthetic book titles or something like that and start scrolling and see if there's something that sort of matches the emotion or the story that I'm trying to tell in whatever song I'm working on. So that's exactly what I did this day. And so I started scrolling through Pinterest, and relatively quickly, a cover popped onto the screen and it said, "The Art of Letting Go." And in that moment, it just felt like it completed what I was trying to say this entire time. And I took that and I ran with it and then ended up writing the chorus. And I knew that this had to be like a very concise way of describing all of these complex emotions, which is sometimes the hardest thing to do, is to try and simplify something that is incredibly deep and complex. So were we ever meant to learn? Life is just roads with no return. In the sense that, were we as humans ever meant to be aware of the temporary state of it all? And sort of like this very existential, rhetorical question, really, of, again, trying to ask a question related to the idea of everything is so beautiful and so full and lush, yet so temporary. Were we as humans inhabiting this complex world, were we ever meant to know how temporary it all is? Again, rhetorical question, meant. Life is just roads with no return. And that's another thing that's been sort of like a theme during the trip that I've thought about a lot is, and I think that happens when you start going your own way in life, either your own way from your family, from your parents, from your siblings, whatever. You realize that it's every choice that you make in life takes you down a road that you cannot turn back from, you know? So let's say like our decision to move here to America and leave our grandparents behind in Slovenia, that was a choice that carried so many, like an avalanche of consequences that you can never take back. So it's a road with no return. And it's this sort of constant battle between things you want to do in life and things that sort of are for your own growth or for your own self-benefit, versus the things, like the price you have to pay for that, the things you have to leave behind. And that was like a running theme throughout this trip. And again, I think it's because I was coming back to Slovenia, to my grandparents, in a much more mature headspace than I had previously been in. You know, it's been 6 years since I went through this similar experience. And I felt like this time around, it was just, I felt it much more, in many more levels, with much more depth than I had before. And I think it's a combination of age, but also of experience. Anyways, now I'm ranting. Anyways, life just roads with no return. Of all the things I wish that I could know, it's the art of letting go. And again, that goes to my personal, I guess, part of my personality of just trying to hold on to things and trying to, in a very futile way, not prevent change, but hold it off for as long as possible. Verse 2.
I see it in the mirror, I see it in the garden, the quiet, steady march of time. I see it in my parents, I see it in my hometown, the universe's greatest pride.
Second verse really just hones in of the inescapability of change, of time passing. You know, you see it in the mirror when you look at yourself, and you perhaps like notice a gray hair, or you notice a little wrinkle that wasn't there before. And it's this sort of like very sudden reminder that time just consistently goes on. Or I see it in the garden. You see, for me, for example, that refers to like this tree that I see from my bedroom. And it's very interesting to observe it, because like this passage of time is very clearly depicted in that one tree, because you see the seasons change. You see it go completely bare in the winter, and then tiny buds start coming up in the spring, then it's lush and green in the summer, then the leaves start turning brown again in the fall, and the cycle repeats. And it's this like constant reminder of time flowing inescapably. And it's this what says in the verse, the quiet steady march of time. It's like it keeps happening, and we get so caught up in our daily lives that it's almost sneaky of time to just continue to move on, while we're sometimes like carelessly throwing it away, worrying about other things. And it's it's very much, to me, it's like this, conceptually it's quite cruel that time is so ever present, the passage of it is ever present, and yet it's not, because it's so incremental, it's not obvious on a daily basis, which makes it very easy to forget that a lot of the things, everything that you experience is there only for a beat, only for temporary, and then it moves on. I see it in my parents, I see it in my hometown, my parents and grandparents. I think that captures, like, I think that's another quite visceral experience of the passage of time, or reminder of it, is when you see your grandparents start to get older, or maybe your parents start to slowly look slightly different than what you're used to them looking, and it's like and it's like, again, this sudden hit of realization that nothing will stay that way forever. And I see it in my hometown. This is a direct reference to Ljubljana, which is the capital of Slovenia. When we went back in the summer last year, there were all of these places that I existed as one thing in my memory, but were no longer like that. And it's this reminder that things keep going, things keep moving. Even if you're not physically there, things will change and morph into the next thing. The universe's greatest crime is, again, to this theme, I've said this multiple times, but it's having all of this beauty and all of this magic and wonder be temporary. That to me is the universe's greatest crime. It's like a dramatic way of saying it, but it's an incredibly tragic circumstance that we exist in. Third verse. Oh my God, this is such a ranty one. I'm so sorry. I just feel a lot of things with this song. Anyways, the third verse.
I think I'm realizing it all comes down to choices of who I give my hours to. It's what gets left behind and whittled down with time that scars my heart all the way through.
This verse is very much based on a conversation that me and my brother had after leaving our grandparents' and grandaunt's house, about how it was like this, we were trying to sort of like process all the emotions that we were feeling, of like joy of seeing them, but also this like profound sadness of knowing that we have to go back and can't stay there and like be with them forever. And we were sort of trying to dilute it down to like a concrete, actionable item. And what we sort of came to was that really when all is said and done, life is just choices of where you decide to put your energy and your time. You know, like, do you do something for your own benefit, and like what I was talking about before in the second verse, and what kind of indirect cost or price you will pay for doing that. So it's all just choices of who I give my hours to. It's what gets left behind and whittled down with time that scars my heart all the way through. And this is very much a direct reference to my grandparents, or for, you know, in your own life, people that you leave behind in order to not leave behind, but like that you are not with in order to pursue something else in life. And like that is to me the most heartbreaking thing, is you do something for yourself or in your own life, but there's all these other adjacent parts of your life that continue to grow old with their own lives, but you cannot be there while also pursuing that other thing. So it's this like, again, like bringing back the idea of time being ever present and ever passing. But in life, it's simply just deciding where you take those precious limited hours of yours and what you decide to do with them. And it's like the heartbreaking part of that is none of it will last. And at the end of the day, you will always have to make a decision on what to do with your time. And for every decision that you make, there's a price that you have to pay. And that's what this song is about. I don't know. It's I think it's definitely the most personal song I've written, but it also felt like a song that I've been trying to write for a very long time because it is so personal to what I feel and what I believe in. And I think it's one that will forever capture how I experience life. Hopefully, we'll see. But let me know if you guys relate to this at all. I don't know. To me, it's like a very existential human experience, but maybe that's just me. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for hanging around if you're still here. This was a long one. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.
Were we ever meant